It seems that I, once again, am late to the party. Honestly, every time I fall in love with a game, it ends up being either 6 years old or has begun to lose its relevance. I started The Last Guardian like 3 days ago, and I started writing the script right after I finished it, so it's easily become one of my top 3 games. I've only got good things to say about it, so I guess you can call this a Last Guardian appreciation video, one that I hope is not 6 years too late. I want to start with everything I gathered about the game's lore. Since I've just finished the game, I haven't checked anything online about what's canon or read some wiki about the plot, so I'm completely going off my knowledge of just playing the game. But I honestly think that's fine since the game is set up that way after all. It makes you question what's going on and wants you to piece together the story from what you're given, and I firmly believe that the amount the game gives you is perfect. It isn't obscure to the point where you're clueless, but it also doesn't hand you everything you want to know. Throughout the game, the questions I had got answered in a very natural way, and they all clicked together in the end. At least that's the experience I had. So now that I've said that, I'd like to share my idea of this game's lore. I have not confirmed a single thing about this, so please keep that in mind as you're correcting me. I also do apologize if these next few minutes feel a little rushed, since my primary goal here is not really to share a summary of the game, but more what I think of it and my commentary as well. We begin our story in a cave without any idea of who we are, why we're marked with runes all over our body, or what the fuck these are. As I said, all these questions were answered, but I'll get to that in a second. The boy and Trico go from this cave to outside, but then back into another cave, but then back outside, and this basically continues and repeats throughout the whole game. We got our first major plot point when Trico becomes what I'd call hypnotized by this glowing blue metal in this cage and swallows the boy. The way I see it, these blue metals were built and designed to control Trico's species, who, because of their size and fighting ability, were perfect to turn into minions. Anyway, we get a cutscene of some clouds, the boy looking like he's going through labor, some pink eyes, more clouds, angry spearmen, more labor, more spearmen, some lightning, a tail, and Trico being lowered into a cave. Now, there are a few things we can gather from this cutscene, like the fact that Trico attacked the village and was injured, but a lot of it remains unclear, like what impact the boy had on all this, or why Trico was ever there in the first place. But there's no time to dwell on that now, because you're awake and your only priority is to pet Trico. Which reminds me, the Guardians are not hostile by nature, or at least not often. Every time Trico becomes hostile, he's either being controlled by the blue stuff or is being threatened. It's also worth pointing out that he and his species seem to retaliate against their oppressors often, considering that the guards are trained to attack them if needed and know how to intimidate or scare them. The game continues from here, and you find some bad guys, some glass eyes, and pretty flies. There are some close calls with Trico, and who I assume is a female version of Trico given the game's ending and her purple feathers compared to Trico's blue ones. Because without these rules, how would we ever know their genders? Just a side note, I am referring to Trico as male in this video because I know it is a debate in the community whether or not Trico has a gender at all, but there are a few parts in the game where the narrator refers to him using masculine pronouns, so that's what I'm going with. After the fight with the other Guardian, you find Trico and get swallowed again. We get a bigger cutscene that gives us a much better understanding of what's going on. Trico goes to the boy's village, has an uncomfortably intimate moment with the boy that ends in swallowing him, and gets attacked by the villagers on his way out. Before he makes it back, he's struck by lightning, crashes, is found by some guards, and is left to die as he is no longer fit for fighting or flighting. Once he's in the cave, he vomits the boy, and now he's got runes. But now back to where we are currently. The boy is unconscious and the bond between the two has grown tighter as Trico is now worried about the boy and tries to wake him up. He does, they go into yet another cave, go outside, have some even closer calls, and encounter this one again. The two Guardians clash, the purple one gets away, and Trico dies. Almost, at least. The boy finds some barrels, Trico starts feeling better, and off they go again. The two find a third cage, but by using the mirror, destroy the blue thing inside of it before it starts controlling Trico. From there, they make their way up to the very last tower and have some very unlucky timing as it begins to ring and signal out to all the other Guardians right when they get there. They arrive and do what Trico was originally meant to do with the boy before he was struck down, which was vomit their children into this bird's mouth. I don't know if I should blame myself or the developers for what I'm about to say, but I initially thought that the people that got vomited into this mouth were turned into barrels and shot back out, meaning we've been feeding Trico dead children this whole time. The more plausible idea would be that the barrels are a reward for bringing the children, and the children are turned into soldiers or used to farm something, but it really could be either. Anyway, the other Guardians turn on Trico upon realizing he's not like them, and he almost dies again while we find a way to save him. During the fight, Trico gets part of his tail ripped off, it falls into the tower, and the boy uses its lightning to destroy the hub of the nest. Upon doing so, the boy passes out, every other Guardian dies, and Trico flies himself and the boy at the nest. For some reason, the purple one is still okay, which surprised me because she was just like all the other Guardians. I don't know why she's still alive, but she's alive, I guess. Anyway, Trico crash lands into the boy's village, leaves him there, and flies back to the nest, now free of the blue. I really can't think of anything else to call it. Every blue thing in this game has something to do with what's controlling Trico and the Guardians, from their horns, to the guards, to the barrels and the magic metal. All of it is blue, and I was never given a name for it, so it's being called the Blue. The game ends on sort of a cliffhanger, with the boy, now fully grown, finding the old mirror in his village and pointing it to the sky. It finds its way to the nest, and Trico sees it. He's alive, and he has started a family with the Purple Guardian since we saw she was the only other Guardian alive, which again, I don't know how she survived. I adored this ending, and I think it was exactly how it should have played out. It wasn't the perfect ending, where Trico and the boy lived happily ever after in the village. It wasn't the tragic one that some were expecting, where Trico sacrifices himself to protect the boy, but instead it was in between. In a word, I would call the ending hopeful. Now, the gameplay itself was something that I found to be greatly executed. It was considerate of every other aspect and incorporates said aspects in a way that only adds to the experience. For example, the puzzles. I found the puzzles to be very original and they really made you think. Granted, they may have been a little too obscure or vague for me at times and resulted in having to read a walkthrough, but I think getting lost like that is meant to happen. You're meant to get stuck and wonder where to go from here because it allows you to take in everything that's happening and go through the game at the right pace. It makes the player wander and see the world that the director intended for them to see. The game's nature makes it so that you aren't supposed to fly through it, which in my experience allowed me to enjoy and appreciate all the little things. Like if I knew what I was supposed to do right away in every scenario, I'd never take a moment to pet Trico, watch him play in the water, or move and act like a real-life pet. I wouldn't have to think about how to reach a particular barrel and come up with any solutions. I wouldn't see the balance between the two protagonists and how they protect and help each other in their own ways. It slows you down and immerses you into the boy's perspective, making you feel less like a player of a video game and more like a part of the story. But to get a little more fundamental, let's talk about the actual controlling of the boy and Trico. I've seen people talk about how the game can feel a little clumsy or repetitive, and while I understand where that's coming from and have seen a bit of it myself, I have to disagree. I sometimes did get frustrated with how the boy moved or how Trico would act like a real pet and not always listen to my commands, but I wouldn't really consider those problems with the game. They didn't take away from the experience I had playing, so I didn't mind them in the end. I'd much rather focus on all the things that the developers did fantastically and successfully, such as the scenery, world, lighting, and sound design. Not to mention the marvel that is Trico. The way Trico's feathers stand up when he's hostile, or how his appearance changes throughout the game without us realizing it, or the way he conveys emotion just with his movement. These are all just the tiny details that went into designing and creating this amazing character. I'm blown away by how the developers were able to make Trico feel so real in every aspect, so that hard work really paid off. Another criticism I saw towards the game was how long it took to come out, but after seeing the final product, I completely understand why and don't blame them at all for it. I think that, especially for games such as this, there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking your time to make sure the job is done properly, as long as you're actually working on it and aren't keeping your fans in the dark. So what am I trying to say in this video? I feel like it was too short since I could go on for hours about this game. I've always been a sucker for these indie single-player story games, but this one just hit different, literally. I've always felt drawn to the way people have a passion for something, Passion's like the director for creating this story for others to experience and fall in love with. It's a type of passion that you can see and feel through the game while you're playing it. It's a type of game where once you get a few hours into it, you enter this sort of paradox where you want to keep playing, but at the same time you don't because you know it'll end soon. And that's pretty much how I felt about halfway through my playthrough. You start to see this beautiful bond between a boy and his unexpected friend, always leaving you wondering what'll happen next and never wanting it to end. And yet, somehow, once you do reach that ending, you're satisfied with it. It leaves you not with a sense of finite conclusion, but of hope and imagination. It is not the end of Trico and the boy's story, but rather the end of a chapter, and how the next one plays out is up to you. So yeah, there is my review, I guess, or appreciation video like I called it before. I don't know what I'm gonna call this video. I'm just talking at this point. If you haven't played the game, go play it. And if you have played it, then go play it again. All in all, fantastic game. I'm gonna go replay it now. And thank you for watching.